the bar that woke Memphis back up. One leaked bar was enough to drag an entire Memphis rap war back into the spotlight, and the craziest part is, nobody can say for sure how much of the story behind it is fact. How much is street mythology? And how much was built through music? Pooh Shiesty came home after years away, and instead of sounding like someone ready to leave the past behind, a leaked track known as Last Seen Evil pulled listeners straight back into one of the most controversial chapters, connected to his old conflict with the EBK-EBG side. For years, people had argued over what really happened between Pooh Shiesty's circle and figures connected to the rival camp. There were stories about an alleged robbery, weapons supposedly taken and displayed online, diss records that kept getting more personal, shootings, public taunts, and one disputed incident involving Moo Slime that became almost impossible to separate from rumor. Then the music started doing what the streets could not, preserving every accusation, every warning, and every unanswered question. That is what makes this story so dangerous to misunderstand. A lyric is not a police report. A diss track is not automatically a confession. And something repeated thousands of times online does not become verified just because people believe it. But in Memphis rap, perception can carry enormous weight. One line can reopen an old argument. One clip can make younger fans rediscover a feud they never witnessed. And one unreleased song can suddenly make everybody ask the same question again. Did this conflict ever really end? Or did prison, time, and distance only freeze it? To understand why that leaked bar hit so hard, we have to go all the way back to the beginning, before the viral records, before the national attention, and before millions of listeners knew Pooh Shiesty's name. Because according to the story that circulated around Memphis, this did not start with music at all. It started with something far more personal, an alleged robbery that turned private disrespect into public humiliation. And once that humiliation hit social media, walking away quietly may have become almost impossible. Where are you watching from right now? Drop your city or state in the comments. If you think old rap beefs can come back to life through one song, come on, If you think the internet makes these conflicts look bigger than they really are, come on, and subscribe to the channel. Because the next chapter is where we break down the incident that allegedly started everything. The robbery that started everything. Before the diss records, before the viral clips, and before millions of people had any idea there was tension beneath the music. The story circulating through Memphis pointed back to one alleged robbery. According to accounts repeated around the local scene, individuals associated with Choppa Gang were accused of entering a location connected to the rival side and taking firearms. That allegation alone would have been enough to create serious tension. But what supposedly happened afterward is what turned the situation from a private dispute into something everyone could see. The weapons were allegedly displayed online. That detail matters because social media changed the meaning of the entire situation. If something happens privately, there is still room for people to deny it, ignore it, or handle it away from the public eye. But once image, claims, and disrespect begins circulating in front of thousands of people, reputation becomes part of the conflict. Now the audience is watching, friends are watching, rivals are watching, and every reaction or lack of reaction gets judged. The message people interpreted from those posts was simple. Something had been taken, and the people accused of taking it wanted everybody to know whether every detail of the original robbery story happened exactly as later retellings claimed has never been independently established in the material surrounding this feud. That distinction is important, but what cannot be ignored is how powerful the story became. The allegation spread, the humiliation became part of local memory, and eventually, listeners started hearing certain lyrics through that lens. That is where the conflict changed, because once Pooh Shiesty's career began exploding, anything connected to his name no longer stayed inside Memphis. The same stories that once circulated neighborhood by neighborhood were suddenly attached to an artist with national momentum. Every lyric gained a second meaning. Every bar was dissected, and when Back in Blood arrived, and a record most of America heard as an aggressive street anthem was interpreted very differently by people who already knew the history. To them, one line did not sound generic at all. It sounded like unfinished business. When Back in Blood became more than a hit, Pooh Shiesty was already building a reputation before the rest of the country fully caught on. His connection to Choppa Gang was woven into his image. His music carried the rawness Memphis listeners expected, and his rise accelerated once Gucci Mane brought him into the 1017 records orbit. Suddenly, a rapper whose references once meant the most to people close to the local scene had a national microphone. Then came Back in Blood with Lil Durk. For mainstream listeners, the record hit immediately. The energy was aggressive. The hook was unforgettable. And Pooh Shiesty sounded like an artist who completely understood the identity he was selling. It became one of the songs that pushed him into a different level of recognition. But while millions of listeners were hearing a street record about loyalty, retaliation, and credibility, people familiar with the Memphis backstory were listening for something else. One particular idea in the song about knowing who took something and getting it back was interpreted by some Memphis listeners as more than ordinary rap talk. Once the alleged robbery and the reported display of stolen weapons were placed beside that lyric, the bar suddenly appeared to carry another layer. That interpretation spread fast. But this is exactly where rap narratives become complicated. A lyric can contain exaggeration, symbolism, personal experience, neighborhood language, and performance all at the same time. Hearing a line as a reference to a real incident does not prove the artist participated in anything, yet perception can still have consequences. If enough people believe a lyric is aimed at somebody, the people being discussed may feel publicly challenged, whether the interpretation is accurate or not. That is what made Back in Blood so important to this story. It was no longer just a local message, if it was ever intended as one at all. The record had become enormous. Whatever people thought the line meant was now being repeated through cars, clubs, playlists, reaction videos, and social media across the country. And for the rival side, ignoring it could look like surrender. So instead of letting Pooh Shiesty's biggest record define the story, they chose the most confrontational response possible. They took his own instrumental and answered him on it. Ebk Fires Back. The response was designed to make sure nobody could mistake it for coincidence. Instead of choosing a completely different beat, Jizzle took the Back in Blood instrumental and used Pooh Shiesty's own breakout moment as the platform for a reply. Symbolically, that move was powerful. It said that the rival side was not going to let one version of the conflict dominate simply because one artist had the bigger song. The reply also pushed the tension into a much more public phase. Once both sides were being connected to direct musical responses, listeners began treating every new lyric like evidence in an ongoing argument. Words were decoded, videos were analyzed frame by frame. References that might have meant nothing in another context suddenly carried enormous weight. The music was becoming a scoreboard, and the audience was helping keep score. Then came another escalation through the record, rumor. One of the most talked about elements was the appearance of Quando Rondo through FaceTime. At that point, Quando Rondo's name was already surrounded by intense public discussion because of the deadly 2020 confrontation involving King Von, someone closely associated with Lil Durk. Pooh Shiesty had just scored a major hit alongside Durk, so placing Quando Rondo inside a record aimed in Pooh Shiesty's direction was interpreted by many listeners as a calculated piece of symbolism. It widened the emotional radius of the beef without needing a traditional feature verse. That is what made this period so combustible. Every gesture could be read as a message, every affiliation could be used as a provocation, and social media guaranteed that even people with no direct connection to Memphis could participate by choosing sides, spreading clips, and turning rumors into trending narratives. Even when tracks were removed or challenged over copyright, the controversy rarely disappeared. In some cases, removal created even more curiosity. People wanted to know what had been said, why the track disappeared, and who had been targeted. But while the music was getting louder, another story was developing underneath everything. A story involving Moo Slime. And unlike the diss tracks, this one would become almost impossible to separate from claims about what supposedly happened in real life. The Moo Slime story changes everything. The Moo Slime story became one of the most controversial parts of the entire conflict because it sits directly on the border between music, rumor, and alleged real-world violence. Moo Slime was publicly associated with the rival side and had appeared in conversations confirming that the tension with Pooh Shiesty's camp was not simply something invented by fans. Then stories began circulating about an alleged confrontation. Different versions spread through Memphis commentary, social media, interviews, and eventually music. The problem was that the details were never fully established through independent reporting in the material surrounding the feud. Who was present? Exactly where it happened? What started it? And what actions each person took remained disputed. That uncertainty did not stop the story from growing. Years later, an unreleased Pooh Shiesty track known as Last Seen Evil surfaced and brought the allegation back into the center of rap discussion. A bar in the song appeared to reference Moo Slime surviving a serious confrontation. Listeners immediately connected the lyric to the old story, and the internet reacted as if a missing piece had finally appeared. But a lyric is still a lyric. It can reflect real memory, exaggeration, artistic bravado, or some combination of all three. The song alone cannot establish precisely what happened. Yet, because the bar seemed so specific to people who knew the history, it was interpreted by many as Pooh Shiesty speaking directly about the disputed incident. Then came the detail that turned the story into street mythology: the alleged malfunctioning firearm. According to versions repeated online, the weapon supposedly failed at a critical moment, allowing Moo Slime to survive and escape. That claim became one of the most repeated pieces of the entire narrative. But repetition is not verification. The source material itself emphasizes that the malfunction story was not independently confirmed through the kinds of official records that would establish it as fact, and yet, once thousands of people repeated it, the story began feeling permanent. That is the power and the danger of rap mythology, because Moo Slime's side had something very different to say. Two sides. One unresolved story. The biggest mistake anyone could make with the Moo Slime incident is assuming there is only one version. While listeners interpreted Pooh Shiesty's lyrics as confirmation of a dramatic encounter, people aligned with Moo Slime pushed back against the way the story was being framed. The argument from that side was not necessarily that nothing had happened. Instead, the dispute centered on how the incident was being described, how much had been exaggerated, and whether rap lyrics were being treated as factual documentation. That difference is critical. In rap culture, credibility is currency. An artist can build an entire public identity around surviving pressure, protecting reputation, and refusing to be embarrassed. So when one side tells a story in music that appears to make the other side look defeated, the response is rarely limited to correcting details. It becomes a battle over identity. Moo Slime himself indicated publicly that there were two sides to the story, and that people should wait to hear his account. That statement alone kept the controversy alive, because it suggested that whatever happened had not been represented in a way everyone involved accepted. Then the accusation of cap rapping entered the conversation. Supporters of the rival side argued that some claims coming through music were either overstated or presented in the most dramatic possible way. Pooh Shiesty's supporters saw the same lyrics very differently. Suddenly, the debate was no longer only about what happened in one confrontation. It was about who could be trusted to tell the truth. And the internet loves unresolved stories. Every reaction video created another interpretation. Every repost gave old claims new life. Every clipped lyric removed another piece of context. After enough repetition, people who had never been near Memphis began speaking about disputed details as if they had personally witnessed them. That is how street mythology becomes stronger than the evidence beneath it. But while the Moo Slime story remained contested, another incident was much more visible. Jizzle was shot, and what happened immediately afterward showed exactly how quickly pain could be converted into content. Jizzle, the shooting, and Paralyzed. When reports spread that Jizzle had been shot, the internet reacted before the facts had time to settle. According to the account repeated in the source material, he suffered gunshot injuries to the arm, but rumors quickly grew more dramatic. With claims circulating that he had been paralyzed, that rumor traveled fast. Pooh Shiesty responded publicly on Instagram with taunting messages based on the belief that his rival could no longer walk. In the middle of an already heated conflict, those posts added another layer of humiliation. The tone was not subtle. The implication was that someone who had been talking aggressively in music had now suffered consequences and might never move the same way again. Then Jizzle disrupted the narrative. From the hospital, he appeared on video moving his limbs and showing that the paralysis claims were false. He was injured. But the most extreme rumors surrounding his condition had clearly gone beyond what was actually visible. That alone could have ended the story. Instead, it became another record. Only days later, Jizzle returned while still recovering and recorded Paralyzed, turning the rumor that had been used to mock him into the title of his own response. Visually, appearing while wearing a cast made the message even stronger. The point was survival. He had been injured. The internet had exaggerated what happened. His rival had mocked him publicly, and he was still present enough to answer through music. This is where the line between trauma and entertainment becomes uncomfortable. To fans, the exchange created another unforgettable moment in the feud. To the people actually involved, the injuries were real, yet social media rewarded the most provocative version of events. The rumor was more viral than the correction. The taunt was more shareable than the medical reality. And once everyone learned that outrage generated attention, the conflict kept moving toward more personal territory. Then a real family loss entered Pooh Shiesty's life. At that point, the tension stopped feeling like ordinary rap competition. Because grief became part of the battlefield, when the beef got too personal, there are moments when a rap feud can still be understood as performance-aggressive lyrics, public posturing, competitive records, and calculated disrespect designed to dominate attention. Then there are moments when real grief enters the picture. Pooh Shiesty lost his brother to brain cancer, a deeply personal tragedy that had nothing to do with rap competition. He mourned publicly. And for a moment, the story surrounding him was no longer about dominance, rivalries, or street reputation. It was about loss. But the timing of music coming from the opposing side created another major controversy. A record associated with the rival camp surfaced during the period surrounding that loss, and included allegations or disrespectful references involving Pooh Shiesty's deceased brother. The source material is careful not to present unsupported claims about responsibility for the death or anyone's exact intentions as fact, and that caution matters. What is clear is that listeners interpreted the timing and content as crossing a new line. The reaction was immediate. Even people who had followed the back and forth as entertainment began questioning how far rap beef should go. Insulting someone who can answer is one thing. Bringing a deceased family member into an active dispute feels completely different to many listeners because the target cannot respond. And the grief belongs to people far beyond the artists involved. This is the chapter where the human cost becomes impossible to ignore. Behind every viral clip were families. Behind every threat were people living with fear. Behind every arrest were careers being interrupted. Behind every loss were people who would never experience the story as content. The audience, however, continued to consume every development as another episode. That created a dangerous feedback loop. The more personal the conflict became, the more attention it generated. The more attention it generated, the greater the pressure on everyone involved to respond. Eventually, something had to interrupt that cycle. And it did. Not through reconciliation, through federal prison. Pooh Shiesty disappeared from the active environment for years. And for a while, it looked like time might finally do what diss tracks. Social media and public pressure could not make the conflict go quiet. Prison paused the beef, but it didn't kill it. Pooh Shiesty's federal criminal case changed everything about the momentum surrounding him. He received a federal prison sentence connected to a separate 2020 incident in Florida, removing one of the central voices in this story from the active Memphis rap environment for years. That absence mattered. Without Pooh Shiesty releasing music in real time, posting responses, and participating directly in the public conversation, the rivalry lost one of its biggest sources of oxygen. Other figures connected to the broader conflict also faced legal consequences and incarceration, changing who was visible, who was free, and who was even in a position to keep responding. From the outside, it looked like the beef was fading, but fading is not the same as ending. The internet had already archived everything. The song stayed online. Interviews remained searchable. Old clips kept getting reposted. New listeners discovered Back in Blood without knowing the history, then found breakdown videos explaining what certain fans believed the lyrics meant. The rivalry transformed from an active exchange into a cultural archive that could be reopened at any time. And that is exactly what happened when Pooh Shiesty returned. After leaving federal custody in late 2025, he re-entered a completely different rap landscape. Years had passed, but the questions surrounding his name had not disappeared. His comeback music immediately attracted attention, partly because fans wanted to know whether prison had changed his mindset. Then Last Seen Evil surfaced, and suddenly, the answer many listeners heard was no. The Moo Slime reference inside the leaked track pulled one of the oldest and most disputed stories from the feud straight back into 2026. It was not simply an old record being rediscovered. According to the source narrative, this was material associated with Pooh Shiesty's post-release period, which made listeners interpret the bar as evidence that the past was still occupying space in the present. Within hours, old allegations resurfaced, old diss records were clipped again, the robbery story returned, the disputed firearm malfunction story returned, Jizzle shooting returned. Every unresolved argument was dragged back into one conversation. Prison had separated people, time had changed circumstances, but neither had erased the mythology. And that sets up the final question. If one leaked song can revive years of anger, rumor, grief, and unresolved history, what does that say about the way modern rap culture preserves conflict? And what should artists, fans, and platforms learn from what happened here? Why this beef still matters. The biggest lesson from this entire story is not about who won the beef. It is about what happens when music, reputation, social media, and real-life pain become impossible to separate. What may have started with an alleged robbery eventually grew into diss records, viral accusations, shootings, grief, prison sentence, and years of arguments over events that still cannot be completely verified. And somehow, one leaked song was enough to make thousands of people reopen all of it. That is the power of modern rap culture, but it is also the danger. A lyric can live forever, a deleted post can be reposted, a 5-second clip can remove years of context, and once fans decide what they believe happened, repetition can make speculation feel like documented history. That is why the difference between a lyrical claim, a street rumor, and confirmed evidence matters so much. Strategically, the artists who survive the longest are often the ones who understand that attention is valuable. But peace is even more valuable. Viral controversy can generate views for a week. A serious legal consequence can remove years from a career. A moment of anger can become permanent once it is recorded, uploaded, and shared by millions. Pooh Shiesty's story also shows how difficult it can be to escape an identity once the public attaches that identity to your music. Even after prison, even after years of separation, old lyrics and unresolved stories were waiting for the moment someone gave them new life. The past did not need another confrontation, it only needed another soundtrack. And maybe that should be the real takeaway. Rap can document pain without creating more of it. Competition can stay inside the music. Artists can defend their reputations without turning every disagreement into something families and communities have to carry forever. Fans have a role too. We can discuss the records, debate the lyrics, and study the history without celebrating real suffering. Behind every headline are people whose losses do not disappear when the video ends. So where do you stand? If you believe rap beef should stay strictly in the music, come on. If you think social media is the biggest reason old conflicts keep coming back, come on dude. And tell us what city or state you are watching from. If you enjoyed this breakdown, like the video, share it with another rap fan, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for the next story, because in hip-hop, sometimes the most important chapter begins after everybody thinks the story is already over.